I'm growing very, very impatient waiting for spring to arrive here in Chicago. The other day, actually yesterday, we got 2 inches of snow and we're supposed to hit 70 degrees tomorrow, so go figure. But luckily, we've got some amazing flowers to work on today. And in this video, we're gonna put together an African violet teacup. Now this project will be perfect for any time of the year, but especially for Mother's Day. The teacup doubles as a little gift box, and we've got some really gorgeous flowers that we're gonna put together. So let's take a look at what we have here in front of us. Now, as you can see here, I've already done a lot of pre-prep because there are a total of 21 flowers that we're gonna be making for this specific project here. And that may sound intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, it goes together really quick. So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you a little bit of what I did as far as inking goes. Now I cut these out of a purple color. It's AC cardstock, and you can use a purple or a blue for your inking. I'm gonna use a blue. And what I did was I just went around the tips of the flowers here and just kind of grazed the surface and just focused on the edges of the petals. So you technically don't have to ink this if you don't want. After training and shaping the flowers, I believe that they're gonna give off a nice look, and because of the shaping and the training, the light is going to hit it differently because of the variation. It's not going to be flat, there'll be some dimension to it, and the light may create this effect for you, but the inking will definitely take it to another level. I know that when I look at projects that you guys post in the official Dreaming Tree group, I can immediately tell when someone has taken the time to really ink their projects, because it really makes them stand out more. So this one here, actually all of these new projects, there's a lot of inking involved, and I think it really just helps beautify the projects even more. So again, I'm focusing on the edges and I'm slightly grazing the top as well, so you can see what it kind of does there. It gives it a nice little added depth to the flower. So get all of your petals inked if you're going that route, and if not, that's okay too. So we're going to get these inked, and the assembly of these goes together fairly quick once you get them all prepped. And again, if you're not inking, then this will go together even faster, but definitely take your time and give them a little bit of ink if you have that time. This will be a project that your recipient will treasure for a long, long time. It's a little piece of art. And luckily, when I hired my art director, Ron Gutman, wouldn't you know that he builds and designs flowers. He's done it out of clay. Now, obviously, he's working with paper, but he does a really amazing job at designing these patterns so that they look as true life as possible. Cardstock does impose some limitations on what you can do with flowers, but in the end, they look pretty darn good. So kudos to Mr. Gutman for sharing his wonderful talents with us, and I have to give a little shout out to my artist Diana, who takes all of his ideas and digitizes them and makes them beautiful and perfect for our cutting machines. Got a wonderful team behind me. that make me look amazing. Okay, so almost done inking 2 of the flowers here. So there's one piece here with 3 petals, the other piece has 2 petals, and that's what makes up each flower. So there'll be a total of 41 pieces like this to ink. You figure it's about, oh, I don't know, 30 seconds or so to ink each one. So yeah, about 20 minutes of inking. I would say that's not too bad. And you could probably do it a lot faster depending on your method, okay? So, petals are inked. I have already pre-inked the little stamen here. I just hit them with some orange, and I actually just used the actual applicator itself. I didn't even put it on my, well, I used the actual ink pad itself. I didn't put it on my applicator, and that works out just fine. Just want to give it a little hint of color, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the assembly of our flower here. Now, you're gonna want to get some toothpicks, and what I did was I took and I chopped the tips of the toothpick off on one side, so they're only pointy on one side. Just cut them right just below where that pointy portion begins so that it's nice and flat, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to glue the stamen onto the toothpick here. And what I'm gonna do just to cover up the brown is I'm just going to cover up just the topmost part of this, just to kind of cover up the brown of the toothpick. I don't want any brown showing through. So just get it a little bit up at the top, and that's also gonna help kind of hold that stamen piece in place as well. Okay, so you can use glue or you can use hot glue, whichever you prefer. I actually just used glue. If you want to do hot glue, you totally can. It may make the job quicker and easier. I'm just putting glue on the entire bottom part of the stamen there, and all I'm doing is just wrapping it around my toothpick. Whoops. And once you kind of get the hang of this down, it goes rather quickly. You just want to make sure that the bottom of that little piece there stays nice and lined up. Okay, so you're just twirling it around the toothpick there. Okay, and you want to give that a few seconds to hold. So I would probably create a little assembly line here. I would ink. Then I would do this. I'm going to do that again here. And just kind of work through it in an assembly line fashion. I'm just going to cut off a little bit of this just to kind of put it right on the top there. And that is going to help us keep the stamen in place a lot better. And it's going to hide that brown. Okay, so then again, I know this is kind of small on the camera here, but just put little dots of glue along the bottom there and put your stick at the end, on one end, probably the end that is a little bit wider as far as that bottom portion, and just wrap it around and roll it right onto the stick, onto the toothpick there. And then just hold it right at the end and give that a few seconds to hold. Okay. All right, so now what we're gonna do, now that we've got that on there, I'm gonna take my floral tape and I'm gonna wrap this around all the way down, starting at the stamen here. I wanna cover up the majority of that yellow. Okay, and you probably wanna give it a little bit more time before you move on to this step to let that really dry. Oops. Now it's holding together. Just be very careful with that. And just wrap that floral tape around your toothpick until you get to the bottom, and then just tear it off. Okay, so that's what you have so far. You can go ahead and curl these out if you want. It's not really that important right now. We're going to be doing a lot of finessing to our little flowers here. Okay, so let's wrap this one. It helps to kind of give yourself a little slack so you're not fighting tension. Okay, there we go. Just wrapping that along the stick here, the toothpick, I should say. There we go. Okay, so there is the beginning of our little flower here. And at this point, all that's really left to do, I'm going to separate these like that. We're going to put the piece with the 3 petals on first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and curl these by training them. This is a 1/4 inch dowel. Okay, and then I just found, I don't even know what the heck this thing is, but it's really thin. It's even less than a 1/4 inch. It's probably 1/8 of an inch. And I'm using this to kind of finesse the little tips of the leaves in various directions. Okay, and that just really makes them look more interesting. Just go in various directions and various angles, and some of them you can leave flat, some of them you can curl forward, some of them you can curl in, some of them you can curl out. You know, do a very significant curl on one side and then just a very light curl on the other side, and just kind of, you know, in nature, nothing's ever really perfect, and there's really no rhyme or reason to a lot of things, because our flower friends here are constantly bombarded by the elements, and I think that is what makes each one unique. And it's almost like a metaphor for life, if we want to get deep here. So again, just curl the edges of petals and just give them some life. Okay, I'm just kind of training this one here, just like that. There we go. Just like that. Okay, so that looks good. There's also, where are they? We've got the little green pieces here. Here we go. Here's the bottoms of our little flowers here. And I'm just going to take these and curl these down. So my texture side is up. I also inked the edges of these as well, just to kind of give them a little bit of life. You're probably not going to see them very much because the flower is going to be hiding them, but that's okay. All right. All right, so we can go ahead and begin building our flower now. The first thing we're going to do is take our 3-petal piece and just slide it right through our little toothpick here. And I've noticed that it kind of helps to kind of twirl as you pull. Okay, and you want to pull it all the way up to the base of that little stamen piece that we just created. And there's a natural tension here because of the floral tape. You know, it's really up to you if you want to add glue. If you want to add glue to make this more permanent, you can put a little bit just below where the stamen kind of ends at the bottom. Okay, and then you can curl that up, and that will make it a little more permanent. But I honestly don't think it's going to be necessary because of the natural tension that the floral tape is kind of creating. But I'm going to do it the way I probably would recommend doing it. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom of this now. Okay, it's okay if you go a little crazy with it. It's going to dry and it'll look nice. So don't worry about being perfect. And just be careful as you're initially threading it to not rip the paper. And then again, twirling as you're pulling really helps ensure that you don't rip the paper. I did rip 1 or 2 of them because I was kind of forcing it too much. Okay, so what you want to do is get that nice and lined up with this piece here so that it's not like this. You don't want that petal hiding. You want it exposed. So keep twirling until it's pretty much butted up against that other one. And then just twist it until you have 5 petals nicely distributed. And then give it one more little push up. Okay, so there's our beautiful flower. Okay, and they're pretty much touching there at the bottom. I would say that that is a success. And then you can put a little bit more glue on the bottom here. And then we'll get this little piece on here to finish off our flower. And again, just kind of thread it gently at first. And then once you get it on there, give it a good twirl as you're pulling or pushing it up, pulling it up, whatever you are doing. And then once it's there, it's pretty much, it should pretty much get right in place for us. Okay, and then we can kind of pull those little leaves down once they're in place so that they kind of show up more. Okay, so there is our pretty flower. Okay, so we can put that off to the side and let that dry. And then I'll just show that to you one more time here. Okay, I'm just kind of rolling this top part just below where the stamen ends, just to kind of flatten it out a little bit more, because I noticed that the more layers of tape that you have on there, the harder it is for it to kind of move upward at that point. So, all right, so again, just putting a little bit of glue just below that little stamen piece there. We'll grab our 3-petal piece and just thread it through, be gentle initially, kind of spreading that paper out as we do this. And then I'm twirling as I'm holding this and pulling down while I twirl. Okay, and give it a good little final twirl there. There we go. Snaps right in place. Okay, and then just get your glue on that next piece. Thread that through. Kind of wiggle it, and then again, just kind of twirl as you pull. Don't worry about that glue there, that's going to dry. And we're just totally focused on the end result here. We're not worried about little imperfections here and there. You're really not going to see that really. Okay, so get that right up against that one there. There we go, beautiful. And last but not least, that little final piece there. Just thread that through. And twirl while you pull. And just nudge that right up against the bottom there. You can see that natural tension there is really probably enough to hold everything in place, but I'm just showing you the foolproof way to make sure that nothing comes apart. I would say that on half of these, I didn't even use glue to hold these together, and they're holding together just fine. You can see there's no gluey mess on that one. So it's totally up to you how you want to do it. I'm showing you the permanent way, and then this is probably also the permanent way, but again, without really testing it for a long period of time, I'm not 100% sure that this will be permanent, but it sure feels like it is. So go ahead and put on a nice movie or your favorite sitcom and get all of your little flowers assembled here. As you can see, once they're all together with all the beautiful inking and the beautiful colors, it's going to look really awesome once we get everything into our little styrofoam ball. Okay, so anyway, let's put these off to the side for now, and let's take a look at the other portion of this that's going to involve some inking, and we're also going to be doing something a little bit new that we haven't done before. And this is the piece that I'm going to show you here in a second. These are the leaves for the African violet, and you can see here we've got a kind of a strange inking situation going on here. And what I did for this, I've got one here. I picked up some new inks this weekend at Joann. by Memento. This is a dye ink. But I noticed that they also, the same brand has pigment and chalk-based inks. I guess it just depends on the style. So what I began with was taking my little ink applicator and inking my edges here. And because we're going to be doing some painting to this, you want to kind of ink the surface a little bit more so that ink gets in a little bit deeper on the edges of the petals here, because we are going to be hitting the very tips of this with some paint to give it that white effect that you see on some of those more tropical flowers. I don't even know if it's tropical. I'm not even sure where it's from. I guess the name would suggest that it's an African flower, but I honestly don't know. I've never grown them myself or have had them, so I'm not overly concerned about overdoing it on the edges here, because again, we are going to be hitting the edges with some paint. So now this is just step one to the inking on this. Step two is going to be using kind of a layer mask to get this little faux vein look. So that's going to be kind of cool. And I actually tried this about 4 times before I was happy with the technique of getting this to look the way I wanted to. And it definitely helps to have, well, I don't know if it doesn't have to be a brand new ink pad, but the green that I was using before just was very inconsistent. That's what kind of prompted me to go out and get some fresh inks, because I do tend to use green a lot, and I think it was just kind of at the end of its life, and I wasn't getting, the application just wasn't very consistent. So it does kind of help to have a fresh ink for this, at least in my experience with this project. Okay, so I might be going a little heavy on the ink here, probably more so than I did on my original, which kind of tends to happen when I do these videos, because my face isn't all up in the project like it usually is when I'm doing it off camera. But for those of you in the Dreaming Tree group, you heard me, or you saw my post about how I was in the studio for the last 3 days doing pre-prep. Well, I mean, it wasn't a full 3 days, obviously, because I have to do emails, and I was actually working on my taxes the last few days as well. But with these 3 projects, and I don't anticipate you guys, all of you, working on all 3 projects right away. I'm sure that you'll do one and then, you know, come back to another one at a later time. But there's quite a lot of work that went into the inking of these flowers. This is just one of the 3 brand new floral projects that we're releasing in this bundle, and they're all equally gorgeous and amazing. Okay, so again, just kind of hitting the edges here. I'm getting a little bit on the surface as well, because we are going to be doing some painting on this piece. Okay, so I think that's going to be okay. So here's kind of what I did. I grabbed another piece of paper. Let me center this more on camera so you can see it a lot better. Found the tip of the leaf here, and then kind of identified the center here, and then I lined up my layer mask sheet, as I'll call it, right in the center. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that I don't have too much on this. I just want a little bit, and with a very light pressure, I just kind of started inking. Okay, and don't move it away right away. Just kind of pull it up to see if you've got the desired effect there. I'm going to push down a little bit harder and pull that back. I have a nice line there. So that kind of gives you the effect of that little vein, okay? And then I'm gonna leave that side alone. And then what I did was I kind of just started here then, and I inked the surface all the way up to that fine line there to kind of add color to that little area. And I left that little white area there. I guess you can get kind of close to it. There you go. Okay, so you see what you got there. We've kind of mimicked the little center vein as if it was creased. Okay, so I'm gonna go around. Again, find the tip of your leaf there. Identify where the middle would be here. Just kind of place it there and get a little bit of ink on there. Probably got a little too much. And just ink right over that center so that the little ink pad's barely hitting it. Okay, you can go back and forth like that. Pull it back, see if you've got a nice little line there. I think that's fine. Okay, and then I'm gonna start on this side here and just try to evenly distribute the ink on my pad here all the way up to that line. Okay, so maybe go deeper on that. There we go. Okay, so just working my way around here. I'm gonna re-ink my little applicator here. And again, just find that center point, get that nice and centered. I'm gonna rub off a little bit of that ink so it's not too heavy. And you can kind of just do a line up and down like that. And I think that looks good. So I'll go ahead and fill in one side here, just to kind of give it that look as if the light's just hitting it differently from one side. Okay, that looks pretty good. Could probably go a little bit heavier. I went heavier on the other one, but that's fine. Okay, so just a couple more times here. Find that center point and just up and down. I'm really pushing down hard on that one, but didn't have enough ink on there. Let's try that again. There we go. You see that little fine line there? And just color that in. Looks good. One more time here. There's my little center point. There's my center point there. Give it a good stroke up and down. Oh, need a little more than that. Well, that time I was really heavy with the ink. That's what happens when I kind of don't undo it. So I'm going to need to clean that up a little bit. And just hit that edge with a little more ink there. And that's okay too, because again, we're going to be painting this in just a second, the little edges there. So we'll clean that up. So there's my little center point. There's the center point there. Let's get our ink on there. Get rid of a little bit of it. There we go. And then just color in one side of it. There we go. Okay, so ink pad, done with the ink pad now. And what I'm going to do is get my white paint ready. Just got a little brush here. I think a small brush is probably the best way to go. And I'm just dipping my brush in my white acrylic paint. And all I'm doing, I just don't make sure it's not too overloaded, is I'm just dabbing the edge. And the more random, the better. Just like that. And I'm just going to work my way around. Kind of helps to grip near the paper. Maybe put your finger underneath this little leaf here, just to kind of create a nice little solid foundation to dab on so that it doesn't bend too much. And just dab, dab, dab. Okay. You can leave a little bit of green showing through too. I think it probably looks more realistic that way. Don't have to worry about getting it perfectly painted. I think the more random the better. Okay, and just kind of working our way around here. Don't want to overdo it. So you're going to do this, repeat this process on both of the little green sections of this project here. This part you shouldn't really see. I don't think I hit the other one with that. You know, now that I have a little more experience doing this, I think it does kind of help to have the tip of the brush a little more heavily coated with paint. It's kind of fun to use some different supplies every once in a while and try some new things. We've got all of these different elements that are going to come together. So don't focus too much on each little individual aspect of the project. Just focus on the end result. Okay. Help to get my finger under there. All right, now before we completely get into the paper aspect of things, we'll have this in the supply list. This is just like a half ball foam ball. What we're going to do is we're going to take about 1/2 inch off of this. Okay, so kind of put it up to, if you've got one of these handy mats that have a little ruler on them, just kind of figure out where that is, and we're going to cut off about 1/2 inch of this. Okay, so just find where you're going. And just cut off about 1/2 inch. You know, it might be a little shy of 1/2 inch, but you can take this piece, and there's a set of score marks to help you identify where to place this thing. Okay, and this looks like it's still a little bit too big, so I'm going to shave off a little bit more. Okay, let's take a look at that. Should fit on that perfectly. There we go. Okay, So that looks good. Let's take a look at the actual assembly of our little teacup here. Okay, this is our little lid. Okay, this is the bottom and this is the top. And then we have a little handle and we have our little panels that we're gonna put on this. And I'm gonna actually put the panels on ahead of time while everything's nice and flat. So that way, just makes our lives a lot easier to do it that way. Okay, so these little panels here, these tiny ones, I actually inked this with a nice blue color. These little panels are gonna go right in the center there. And then these panels, these have little score marks on them. We're gonna put those there. But actually, with these, I think we're gonna put these on after the top part's assembled. So let's just focus on getting the panels for the bottom in place here. Okay. And then we'll start putting this together. Okay, so grab one of your little panels here and let's get some glue on our panel. And I'm going to dab that really nice. And just try to get that nice and centered within the little confines there of that little shape. Okay, and just repeat the process until all of these tiny little panels are on. Okay, a couple more to go, and then we can get this all assembled. Luckily, with the bottom piece here, it's all kind of one piece. So we're just going to be gluing a series of tabs together and constructing the top and the bottom and then joining them together using a series of tabs. It's going to go together pretty easily. This is probably the quickest part of it. Okay, so once your panels are on there, you want to go ahead and at this point, we want to fold everything at the score marks just to make life easy. Okay, so go ahead and fold everything at the score marks. And it's going to be kind of like this, at this angle here. So that bottom tab is to help close the bottom off. The top triangle is what we're going to use to connect the bottom to the top of the teacup. And then, so really all we're going to be doing right now is gluing two tabs together to their corresponding neighbors. Okay, and that should be pretty painless, should be pretty easy. Okay, but again, bending everything at the score marks right now will make this process that much easier because we're kind of loosening up those fibers and helping this project take on its intended shape more easily. Okay, so let's kind of just start on one side here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on this tab here, the larger triangular tab here. I'm going to spread that glue out to the very edge, tuck it behind its neighboring piece. Just make sure that you've got it nice and aligned, and just press and hold and squeeze that between your fingers to get that piece connected. Okay, and then moving up to this piece here, just get a little bit of glue on that tab and just join it. This one is a straight up and down angle. This one's got an angle here, but this one's pretty much straight up and down. Let me zoom in here. Okay, moving right along, next tab. Just doing a very, very thin layer of glue on these tabs here. Try to avoid having to spread the glue with my fingers if possible. It helps to kind of keep the tip of your glue nozzle right along against the paper so that it's kind of forced to spread more thinly. as you're applying it. Okay, that's enough. Again, just make sure that this one is nice and up and down, nice and vertical connection there. Okay, moving right along. And in the case of gluing tabs like this, less is more. The more glue you have on here, you got to look at it this way. When we're pushing this glue and squeezing it between our fingers, it's kind of making its way between the fibers into all the little nooks and crannies. And the more glue you have, well, the more surface area it's going to need in order to dry quickly. So more glue is not always the solution. A little bit of glue goes a long way, and it helps keep things flowing a lot more efficiently from a time perspective. It just goes a lot faster if you have less glue. You need enough to actually get it to stick, but sometimes using too much does not work in your favor. Okay, so go easy on the glue. Oops. Now it's going to get a little more, oh, I forgot to fold that one there. It's going to get a little more challenging as you go along as far as gluing these sides together, but you can still get your fingers in there just fine, so it shouldn't be impossible, just a little more challenging. We've got a little less space to work with each time. There we go. Get that piece connected. I'm just giving it one good squeeze, and it pretty much holds for us. Okay, so now as we're approaching the tail end of this process here, this piece kind of wants to fold in on itself. There we go. Just make sure that you're getting it nice and aligned. There we go. And pull that piece back. Let's get a little love on there. This triangle here. Ooh, way too much glue. I'm just going to grab my brush and brush some of that off. It's a tight little area. Normally I'd use my fingers, but that was a tiny, tiny little area there. Probably would just do more harm than good by trying to stick my finger in that little area. Okay, give that a good squeeze. All right, and now all that's left to do is just join these two sides together. So we have one extra tab to work with here. I'm going to start with this tab on the bottom, just to make sure that I get everything nice and lined up. Okay, just make sure that it's nice and even, nice and lined up. Give it a good squeeze. Okay, and now because of the shape of this and because it's almost put together here, we may need to apply the glue to that last large tab from the inside. Okay, it might just be easier, and that way we don't risk, hopefully you can see, well, there's one little tab here. It's just like all the other tabs that you can see it there. There's my tab right there, I think. Yep, you can see it there. Just get a little bit of glue on that tab. Try to get it out to the edge if you can. And just stick your finger inside. Get that last little tab to hold. There we go. And then, of course, we have that really small triangular tab. Yeah, right here. It's the last little tab. You've done this enough to know what tab I'm talking about. And I went a little heavy on the glue there. I'm just going to brush some of that off. Okay, and last tab to hold this in place. Just give it a good squeeze. Okay. There we go. All right, so now Let's see. Yep, we can go ahead and close this off because the top of our little teacup will be open, and that's where we're going to be sticking our hand in and gluing these tabs to the inside of the top of this piece to get these two pieces to connect and form one continuous piece. So now, as far as the bottom of this goes, we kind of have to close this all in one shot here because we don't want to be ripping any paper open or anything. So I'm just doing a little bit of glue on the inside of the tab and then doing a fine little line along the outside, and I'm going to run that glue right out to the very edge and spread it nice and thin so that it closes up nicely for us. And I pull the tabs up a little bit so that as I'm pushing down, it grabs more of the surface area of our paper. And then just go ahead and run your finger along the very edge on all sides and push down. And you may have to kind of nudge some of these walls in a little bit to get them to line up with the bottom. Okay, and if we don't get it all perfect in one shot, you can always go back in and kind of clean it up. But I got a feeling that this is going to be good first time around. And plus it's the bottom, so I'm not overly concerned about it because no one's going to be looking at the bottom, but the OCD inside me will take a look at it one more time and make sure that it's all perfect, and it looks great. Okay, so our bottom is done, and now let's take a breather here for a second and let's just put our lid together. Here's our lid. What you want to do is fold everything at the score marks. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take and glue these tiny little triangular tabs to their corresponding neighbors to create a nice little lid for us. And then our actual flowers are going to go right on top of that. Now with this, I would recommend folding this back and forth a couple times. This will ensure that when we glue these together, they are more up and down and not angled out. Okay, so just a few little dots of glue on this tab here. Connect it with its neighbor. Make sure you got it nice and lined up. Push and or squeeze and hold for just a second. Again, with the glue, less is more, especially in this case. We've got a very tiny tab here. Give it a dab and connect and squeeze and hold. There we go. I've got a little glue on my fingers there. All right. There we go. And fold that up, get it nice and aligned, and squeeze and hold. Wonderful. And moving right along, we've got 3 more tabs here. And get that right out to the edge. You know, what holiday or what season or what life event or what project does the smell of a hot glue gun remind you of? I don't know why, but it reminds me of Halloween or Halloween crafts or fall crafts. Ah, I know why. I think it's because I've made a lot of autumn wreaths. In the autumn. I don't really do a lot of spring wreaths, or my favorite time to craft is in the fall, so I think that's what it reminds me of, is making wreaths. I'm always using hot glue for that. I think the first time I ever made an autumn wreath was with Mary a long time ago. All right, so our lid is done. Okay, so let's put that off to the side for a second, and let's take a look at the top parts of our little teacup here. And as usual, you want to go ahead and we want to fold everything at the score marks just to make life easy. Okay, and there's one more fold here. So just get everything folded, and you'll notice that one of these sides has a couple slits in it, and of course that is for our little handle. And we made the handle two-dimensional because it's just as effective and way less work. Why make it three-dimensional? And 2D is more than enough for this. Okay, and let's just get this other side prepped as well. And we're gonna pretty much at the tail end of this project here, guys. I know I give you a lot of props for making all the beautiful flowers. And hopefully, to me, it's a labor of love. I really enjoy it. I told Ron, let's do a nice floral bundle for spring/Mother's Day. And I don't care how many flowers there are, because honestly, I've grown to really enjoy the process of paper flower making. And one main reason why I really love doing it is because the end result is so worth it. It is so worth it. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect these two pieces together. Okay, so let's start with the small tab here. Let's get a little bit of glue on this small tab here and do your best to get it right out to that edge. Okay, and I'm just going to lay this flat and get that nice and lined up and just push down. Give it a few seconds to get its initial grip, which I didn't do. See, I kind of rushed it. Do as I say, not as I do, as the saying goes. This time I will be more patient and get that nice and lined up. And give it a few seconds to really get a hold. Okay, so once you get these two tabs semi-gripped or semi-glued, it helps to fold this over and kind of just make sure that these two, once they're on top of each other, match up nicely and are nice and flush. And that helps you ensure that this little tab here was glued correctly. Okay, so once we have that joined, what we can go ahead and do is begin piecing and gluing these longer sides together, or just these sides together in general. Okay, so get my glue going here, and I'm going to start with this tab here and just get that glue right out to the edge. And I'm going to be doing my little smear technique here just to make sure that I get it all the way out to that edge so it's nice and aligned, nice and perfect. Kind of tuck that in a little bit and just press and hold until it's fully set. Again, less glue is more. All right, now let's get this little bottom piece in place here. Get that glue right out to the edge. And tuck that under. Just make sure that you're gluing it at the correct angle. There we go. All right, one side is done, and we can just move right on to the next tab here. It's not too bad with just two little tabs here. And again, if you are careful with the glue and don't use too much, each of these little sections should go together rather quickly. Most of the time is just waiting for that glue to set, and the less you use, the quicker that'll happen. So definitely be very sparse with it. Make sure you get it covered on that tab, but there's no need to glob it on there. Occasionally I get emails or I see posts in the group saying that my pieces won't stay together or my paper's warping, and that to me is the first indication that that person is using too much glue. So go easy on the glue. Okay, so that's done. Moving right along. Next tab. Again, I'm just kind of starting on the inside and then working that glue right out to the edge and spreading it nice and thin. Let's get it lined up and glued in place. There we go. Perfect. We're going to throw some panels on this, get the two sides connected. We do have a little bit of some gold trim that we're going to add on this piece here to give it a little splash of elegance. Okay, just tuck that under, get it nice and lined up, and squeeze. And we're just about done. All right, next little tab here. Same process. And this is going to be a great little gift for pretty much any occasion, but with Mother's Day coming up, and I know that our hydrangea tray that said Mom on it was a huge hit a few years back. And we're hoping that this does just as well. It's actually, I think it's less flowers than the hydrangea tray, but you know, we are putting them on little toothpicks, so there's probably balances out as far as the amount of effort involved to complete the project. Oh, wait a second, I forgot about this tab down here. Sorry, Mr. Tab. All right, let's get that on there. Spread that out. Tuck it in, get it nice and aligned, and squeeze and hold. There we go. Looking good. All right. Almost done. We've got this tab left, and then we're going to join it all together here in just a second. Spread that out. Tuck it under, align, and squeeze and hold. There we go. All right, and last little tab here. Let's tuck that under. Oops. Oh. Luckily, I just got a little bit of glue right on that main structural piece there, but we've got little panels that are going to cover that up. So if you make a little boo-boo, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so now we're just going to join this together. And this little lip here, this actually curves in just a tad. Okay, so it's going to... All right, let's just go ahead and get that glued to its neighbor. Just make sure that you've got it nice and lined up. And we're going to squeeze and hold that. Give it a little extra love and a little extra time. Okay, so we've got these two tabs left here to glue. And if you don't want to, you could totally just get your glue bottle under there. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on this little scrap piece of paper, and I'm just going to paint, I'm actually going to paint it onto the underside of this piece here. Just get that glue right on there, wipe off any excess, and then just kind of use that as my applicator instead of the tip of the glue bottle. And then that way I'm not stressing any of the pieces here. I'm getting a nice even coat of glue, nice and thin, and I'm less prone to making a mess too. So that's always helpful. And then I'm gonna grab my glue and get a little bit more. So just put it on one side, and then that way you can totally use the bottom here as a guide and not get any glue on that. And just kind of paint it on the underside of that piece there. And get that down, and then also get this piece down here, this last little tab. And that looks great. And just make sure you press and hold that, let it stick. Okay. There we go. Okay. So there's our little piece there. And at this point, to kind of tighten this up and make it a little stronger, you can grab our little panel pieces. And as you can see, this is kind of how it's going to work, like that. I wanted to wait until we had this assembled mostly before putting this on. Otherwise, it may have been a little bit more difficult to assemble it. With this added element here, it may have provided a little bit more resistance and just would have made it a little bit harder to glue on. So now with this, make sure that for this piece here, where you've got the little slits, you're grabbing the panel that also has the slits. Okay, and get those nice and lined up. Make sure that you can see all the way through and get it nice and centered. It's a little challenging, but it can be done. Might actually help, depending on the color of your paper, to look from the inside as you're doing this. You can kind of see, you can see the light coming through it that way. And that way you know that you've got it perfectly lined up. Okay, so that looks good. All right, so again, we're just gonna work our way around, get our glue on these little decorative pieces. Make sure that you get that glue out to the edge as well. If you get a little bit too much there, just kind of dab it and make sure that as you're applying it, get it nice and centered. That looks good. And just squeeze that between your fingers. Just make sure that you've got it nice and flat onto the surface of our little teacup. Okay. I would say that that's probably the most important thing, is to make sure that the edges are nice and glued down so they're not pulling away from our project. Okay. Getting close here. Now I really glob the glue onto this one. I'm gonna have to spread that out. This glue is drying very, very fast today. I'm not sure why. Might have something to do with humidity. Could be a number of things. Not really sure. Oops. Hopefully that'll get covered up. Get it nice and centered. And squeeze. Okay. Again, just make sure those edges are nice and glued down. I think this paper maybe is really soaking in the glue. I'm not really sure, but get that glue on there. And try to get it nice and centered. And just squeeze Work those edges of the little panel, make sure that those get on there nicely. And it's going to stiffen this thing up. There we go. Okay, next piece, we got 2 more. We're going to join this all together. We've got a little handle to put on yet, and some little gold trim. That's going to look nice. Okay, nice and centered. There we go. I'm really squeezing right at the edge of the panel to make sure that that's staying down for us nicely. All right, last little piece here. There we go. Okay. That's really pretty paper. All right, so that's set. Let's just test our little lid. Make sure that fits nicely, and it does. I'm gonna leave the lid on there while we work on, well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm gonna take that off. And let's go ahead and join these 2 pieces together. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed these little teeth through the bottom. Okay, and we're going to glue them to the inside of this piece here. And I may need to get my phone out here to show you what I'm doing so that you can see it better. Okay, so you can see the little light there. Okay, so you can see the little tabs there. Okay, and what we're going to do, and I'll show you here, let me just start with 1. We're going to work on 1, and then we'll put in glue on this tab here. Okay, let's pop that on top. And I'm going to do this off camera real quick. Get it nice and lined up. And then I'll show you what I did once I'm done. You want to make sure that that's pretty much lined up with the other little square here, or this rectangle, and it's nice and lined up. Okay, let's take a look inside real quick. So you can see the 1 tab, which is it's right here, that tab right there. I just glued that right to the inside of this piece here. So you're going to take the rest of the tabs, and I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to put glue. You can see the glue on this tab now. I'm going to fold it in up against this wall. Just make sure that all these teeth are inside so that you don't have to pull this thing apart and stress it out. Okay, so there's 2 tabs now that are glued down. You can see the 2 there on the right. And I'm just going to work my way around getting the remaining 4 tabs glued into place. And I'm just using this finger here to push from the outside while I've got my middle finger in here, just kind of squeezing it up against this piece here. Okay, now we have 3 tabs glued. Okay, you can see the 3 there on the right, and then there's 3 on the left that have yet to be glued. And that's what we're going to do next. So I just put glue on that tab, and now I'm just squeezing it here. Okay. And I'm just going to do the last 2 here. So that is going to join the top and the bottom together for us. And that just leaves our little handle, the trim, and then we can go ahead and That's cute. Very cute. Okay. Let's turn this thing off and let's get our little handle in place here. Let's find the side with the slits. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these two blue pieces and glue them back to back, but we are not going to glue these little tabs together. We want them flaring out. So let's just flare them out for now so we remember not to glue them. But the main part of the handle we do want to glue together. So this is the inside. I've got my texture on one side. This is the inside. Get our glue on there and take that, line it up with the other side. We're just kind of sandwiching it together. Just make sure you've got it nice and aligned. And squeeze all the way up and down. You can fold these back over. Just remember not to put glue on these little tabs, okay? Because that's going to get glued to the inside of the actual teacup. And we've got some little gold trim pieces here that are going to get glued to both sides. Okay, so get your glue on that piece there. And just match it up. Okay, I'm kind of using this little, that little scallop there, or whatever you want to call it, that little shape as my guide. Trying to make sure that you've got a nice even border going all the way around that little piece there. Okay, and just push, make sure that that gets a good grip. Flip it over. And get your glue on the other side. And let's lay that one down into place. I'm just kind of dabbing right there because I had a little bit of excess glue that kind of popped out on me, but that's okay. All right, so our handle is pretty much complete, and we're going to close these little tabs up and slide them through the little slits there, just like that. Then we're going to take these two tabs inside here, and actually, so you can see the two little tabs, we're going to take them and spread them out. Spread them open like this. And we're going to put glue on the underside of each of these little tabs and glue it to the inside of the wall of our teacup. Okay, so I just spread them open, put a little bit of glue underneath it, and now I'm squeezing it so that it adheres to the wall of my teacup. So you can see there what I just did. All right, we're going to repeat the same thing with the bottom tabs. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue on both sides, spreading it open, and I'm just going to hold that in place. What is my finger doing here? And just hold that until it sets nicely for you. There we go. All right, so our teacup is pretty much done. I'm just going to kind of bend it a little bit so it gets a nicer form there. Okay, so let's find these two little gold pieces here. Okay, this one here, you can see there's little score marks on it, so you want to fold at the score mark, and that is going to go right here around the bottom. Okay, so find, I don't know, I guess what I'd call the front of it. If I photograph this thing, I'm probably going to photograph it like that, maybe? So where the two ends meet, maybe make that towards the back. Okay, so I'm going to start it here. And let's get glue on just one section here so we can get that in place. Kind of use it as an anchor for the rest of this. just match it up with where the little score mark is. Should be right along the edge of that little section. And just push and hold that down for a second until it holds. And then before you totally glue it down, just wrap it around and make sure that it fits nicely and that it terminates pretty much perfectly, which it does. It's pretty much spot on. Okay, so that part is glued down. I'm going to go ahead and get glue on the rest of this little piece here. It's very subtle amounts of glue. You don't need a lot. You don't want it squirting out. So if you kind of globbed it on too much in certain areas, just kind of brush it down a little bit, flatten it out, and then just work it around the bottom there. Try to make sure that you're keeping it nice and straight. Okay. You might want to pull on it just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of tension, and line it up, and then just hold it where it terminates there, and then run your finger along the other areas just to make sure that it's nice and flush with that paper so that it holds for us nicely. Okay, so there you go. There's that. And then we've got one more. We're going to do the same thing with this, but on the bottom to give it a nice little trim effect on the bottom as well. So let me turn this off. Again, this also has some little score marks on it. So just get that nice and scored. There we go. Or nice and folded, I should say. Make sure it's nice and straight. Okay. And I would probably terminate this on the same side here like that. Okay, so let's do that. Let's grab our glue, put it on this one section here, one of the tail end sections of this piece, and let's start it where the other one ended or started as well, and get that nice and centered, and just hold that down and let that get a good hold before we move on and do the rest of it. You can do this in little sections if you want. You can do this one at a time. I think that once we get that first one down, this one does have a little bit more surface area, so maybe I'll be a little more conservative with it and maybe do 2 or 3 sections at a time instead of trying to do it all in one shot. You could do it in one section at a time if you want. Whatever's more comfortable for you. There we go. And you just kind of hold that down while I apply glue to the next little section. And by the time I get my glue on this section, I bet that one will be dry. So we can kind of just have a little assembly line here for this little panel. It's all in the details here. Okay. There we go. Just kind of running my finger along that little piece there. Get that glue to really bond with my paper. There we go. And last but not least, spread that out and close it up, and it should join and meet that other piece pretty much spot on. There we go. Okay, so there it is, our beautiful little teacup. Doesn't that look great? That looks great. Okay, so all that's left to do at this point is get our little flowers in here. Okay, so as far as the arrangement on this goes, I just took my first one here and shoved it in as far as it'll go. There's going to be a little bit of a gap there, but that's totally fine. It'll make it look more full. And so I got one right top center, and you can always pull these out if you're finding that you're not getting it lined up as well as you would have liked. Okay, and the idea is to just kind of stagger these and just get them in there. You want these petals to be kind of coming out so they're nice and alive, and try to get them in there. You don't want them competing too much, but you also want to make sure that you're getting enough coverage. So this is kind of one of those things where it's really a matter of preference, personal preference as to how you get everything situated. And then once you've got them in there, you can always kind of finesse each individual little petal. I'm kind of going in at an angle. I'm not going straight down. There we go. Okay. And as you work through this here, like I said, you may need to kind of adjust a petal here or there. Okay. And then I'll go down here and just work my way around. There we go. And remember, you can always go in and pull some of these out if you want to rearrange something or put something in a different spot. Okay. I can already tell that, I'll bring this one up a little bit. Yeah, and these flowers start to go quick. You think that at first when you do the top there, you're like, wow, I made way too many. But once you get to about here, it starts to kind of go really quick. I think it'll be just enough flowers. Okay. And I might be able to squeeze one in here. And it's quite all right if they're kind of fighting for space here. The more the merrier with these. I want it to look nice and full. Okay, I've got probably enough room for 2 more down here. Let's take a look at that. Okay. I've got one little area there that can use another one. And again, it's going to be a matter of kind of finessing these little petals and moving things around here and there, maybe shoving them in a little bit further in some places. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of it for this. I've got a nice little area here. I could use one. Should be nice and full when everything is said and done. I've got a little gap here on the bottom. Let me grab one and pop it in there. I'm starting to kind of lose areas to hold this, so you got to kind of dig in there. There we go. I've got 2 left. I'm going to take a look at this and see if there are some little areas here that need a little more love. And again, now that we're getting a little crowded here, you may need to move a petal out of the way here and there to really get the room. One sec here. There we go. I actually have two more. I'm gonna grab one and pop it into the top here, just to kind of fill this up more, or fill it out more, I should say, so that it looks more full at the top. Okay, that's looking pretty good there. And with the last one, just kind of look around and see if there's any area where maybe there's more of a gap than in other areas, and just fill that in. I'm going to put another one on top just to make it look more full on top. There we go. Okay, so now that they're all in, you can go ahead and finesse some of these petals and pull them out or push them in until it just looks right. Okay, and what is right? Well, that's very subjective, and that is up to you, but I feel like if you can minimize the amount of the styrofoam that you see and just try to make it as full as possible looking, then you will have succeeded. Okay, well, I think that's looking pretty darn good. Okay, so let's take a look at these leafy pieces here. Now, here is our lid, okay, and you can see the difference between these two pieces here. We've got one piece that's a little bit larger and it has some straight edges on it. Okay, this is the piece that's going to get glued on to our lid. You want to make sure that you match that up so that all of these edges that are visible here line up with the edges of the lid. Okay, so you just need to kind of scoot that around until you have it perfectly in place, and it may help to kind of flip this over to get an idea of how it lines up. Okay, so this part needs to go on here, okay, and then this piece, you can see that there's little score marks on here. That is going to get glued on top of this piece here. What you can do to kind of hide the bottom of the styrofoam ball is train the very edge here, or where I guess the leaf begins relative to the little circle there. Train that up a little bit, and then train the rest of this down so that that curls down so that it kind of looks like that. Okay, and then we can kind of push that down like that. Okay, so we want that to kind of start on its way up. Okay, and then the rest of it kind of coming down like that. You can do that all the way around. And then take that and train this downward like so. So it's kind of up and down. Okay, and that will kind of hide the bottom of the styrofoam ball a little bit better. Just like that. And then, of course, it may not be perfect right off the bat. Once we get everything glued into place, we can go in and finesse some of these things even more to kind of make them a little more perfect, but that is kind of what we're going for here. Okay, there we go, kind of like that. And you can always kind of finesse this with your fingers as well. And like I said, once we get to that end point, we'll get that all figured out. But we can go ahead and get this glued on to our lid here. Okay. So let's get that glued on, and you want to get that, work that glue right out to the little edges there. Just try to visualize a little 5-sided pentagon, I guess it's called. And let's glue that to our lid, just making sure that you've got, it doesn't matter where you start and where it ends, because it is symmetrical, but just make sure that it's all nice and lined up against these edges here. And then once you have that, you can flip it over and push down from the inside. Give that a little time to dry. Okay, so take a look at your lid here and find the side, actually the bottom, find the leaf that's like the largest. Okay, and then there should be 2 small ones just to the left of it. Okay, or I should say clockwise from it. So large leaf, small, even smaller. Okay, there's the giant leaf on this one is going to be just to the right of that large leaf, so that we have large, small, and then pretty small. Okay, and that is how this is going to get glued onto this part here. Okay, so we're going to glue that just like that. But I actually, what I'm going to do is before I glue this onto there, I'm going to actually glue my styrofoam ball onto this. Now, you're seeing it with the flowers already on there. I would recommend doing it without the flowers on there. Okay, so I'm going to put some hot glue on the bottom of this, and as you can see, I kind of made a boo-boo and had to pull this off because I got these reversed. And then you want to make sure that this foam ball gets glued right onto the center of our little leaf structure there. Once this is complete, and once that's got a good hold, we're going to take that and again find that largest leaf, and we're going to line that up here. Okay, just like that. So the large leaf on this is going to, the large leaf on this piece is going to be to the right of that large leaf, so that we have the smaller leaves over here, and this is where your handle is going to be. Okay. And then once you have all of your flowers in place, you're going to go ahead and get that nice and centered onto the structure here and get that glued into place. Okay, I'm going to lift this up and push from the bottom. And now here's a little tip. Once you start putting your flowers into the styrofoam, once it starts to really get in there and you start getting a lot of flowers in there, it may be difficult to hold it in place. So what you can do very carefully, if you take and just jab a dowel into the styrofoam, you can use that as kind of a tool to help you hold it in place while you're pinning the rest of the flowers in place. And one other thing too that I failed to mention before is that when you're placing these flowers, try to change the height of some of them. Jam some of them in completely, leave some of them out so there's a little bit of room. Just kind of change the amount that you're actually putting the flowers in at. You don't want them to all be on the same level. You want some to be a little bit taller, some to be a little bit shorter. And then finally, you know, once you get all your flowers in, it can kind of help to go around and kind of finesse the leaves a little bit, or the petals, I should say, and just kind of go around and look at some of the areas and decide, hey, maybe I should just kind of bring these flowers up a little bit. Maybe I should tuck one flower in. You know, just do your best to kind of stagger these so that they cover up the foam nicely, and that so that they're not over competing with each other. Okay, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but not really. As long as you take your time and just take a look at all the little flowers, you'll have a really nice end result once that's all said and done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do make this project, I'd love to see your version. Feel free to post it in the official Dreaming Tree group on Facebook. You can also email us and send us your work there. But either way, I hope you enjoyed the process, and I look forward to crafting with you again.